Hey losers, I'm Coral. Welcome to my channel. If you're joining me for the first time, I typically read horror books, although I dabble in all things dark and mysterious. So if you're into that, welcome to the party. Today I am here with the books that I read in the second half of November. There were, how many? 5 of them? There were 5 of them, so this shouldn't be too long. Oh, I say that and then every time it's still just a regular ass length wrap up video. Okay, so to start out with my stats, I read 11 books. 3 of these were off of my TBR, which makes sense because I did focus mostly on 2024 releases that I really wanted to get to. I read in total 3,455 pages, which is about 115 pages per day. I read 9 horror books, a literary fiction book, and a nonfiction book. The oldest book I read this month came out in 1991, and the most recent, 2024. Hold on, I think I just got a package. Shit. It's a big fucking package. Something for Zach's birthday. Sorry, I'm back. Zach's mom bought him like a flat top grill for his birthday. He's very excited. His birthday was a couple months ago, but we're kind of waiting for like a Black Friday deal on it, and it didn't really happen. So anyway, it's here now though. So I'm also very excited about this birthday gift. Okay, so anyway, those are the end of my book stats. I'm going to start out with a book that I don't have a physical copy of. This was a book that I had an e-arc of from NetGalley. This is a literary fiction book that came out this year called Whoever You Are, Honey. This is by Olivia Gatwood. This is her debut novel, but I read that she has published a lot of poetry before, so I didn't know that going in, but kind of makes sense. She has very nice writing. Fang. Very nice writing. Kind of a weird premise for a novel. It was literary fiction, but it did have kind of a touch of like science fiction elements in it. Some AI stuff. It was very interesting. This is about a young woman named Mitty who's in her late 20s, and she is housemates with an older woman named Bethel. And you know that Mitty kind of like, she got dropped off there by her mother. And when I first started reading this, I was like, wow, she's been there for a long time then, right? But it's only been 10 years, and you're like, well then how did this happen then? And so you know there's been some sort of scandal, but you don't really know at first, like, who is this involving? Is it Mitty's family? Is it Mitty herself? Like, why would this happen? Why isn't Mitty living on her own? And so like, some of this book reads almost like a thriller because there are a lot of secrets in this book. And I won't divulge that because I think a lot of what I liked about this book was uncovering the secrets. But I will say that that secret, it's like, I don't know why that was so secretive, but I did like the pacing of this because it did feel, you know, kind of fast-paced because I wanted to know what was going on. But of course, like, the reason Mitty's living with Bethel isn't necessarily the only secret in this novel. There's also some interesting things going on with these new neighbors. So they're a young couple, and the woman in that couple, Lena, is nice and quiet, but she seems kind of lonely, and she takes a liking to Mitty. And it seems like she wants to make friends with Mitty, but Mitty is like not really sure how to do that anymore. She's spent the last 10 years of her life like not making friends, kind of purposely, because of what's gone on in her past. So it's kind of like this book about making friendships, and you know that there's something strange going on in Lena's relationship with her boyfriend. It's almost like she doesn't have a personality, or not necessarily that she doesn't have a personality, but it's almost like a huge portion of her personality is catering to what her boyfriend needs. And that's really strange. Almost troubling to me. So what's up with that? The book also starts out with this other person involved in tech being murdered by some of his employees, and Lena's boyfriend like knew this guy, and so there's like how is he connected to that and stuff like that. So I will say towards the end there were things that I wish had been explored more, things that I felt like weren't answered. And I don't mind ambiguousness, of course, but sometimes I need certain things addressed, and there were things that weren't addressed in this that it was like, come on, what the fuck? I think one of the, what's the word for it? You know when they have like those comparisons at the, like before the synopsis, and this one was like Grey Gardens meets something, I don't know, but if anything's ever compared to Grey Gardens, I'm like, yes, I want to read that. So I'm assuming that's why I requested to review it, because I requested to review it like way at the beginning of this year, and I'm just now getting around to it. I think that this might have been published in like July. I really did enjoy this, like a solid, really liked it. You know what I mean? Despite some things, like I said, wish the author would have kind of followed up with a couple things. There was like a really weird part in particular with a hand. Maybe if you've read this, a hand in a bathroom. I was like, this is really weird. I like it. If you've read it, you'll know. Then I also read Be Careful What You Wish For by R.L. Stine. This was my, I think I pulled this from my Star Jar this month. So this was an okay Goosebumps novel. Didn't knock my socks off, but also not a stinker. This is about a girl named Sam who is kind of like tall, gangly, a little bit awkward and klutzy. She's on the basketball team, but despite her height and her long leggies, she doesn't really have any athletic skill. And she gets a lot of grief from a girl named, is it Judith? Does it say on the back of here? Yeah, Judith. And Judith's like kind of group of friends, it just really bothers her, right? But one day Sam is walking home and she sees this strange woman. The one's like, oh, I'm lost. I need to go here. And seems like, okay, that's really far from where I'm going, but I can help you get there. So Sam does, and then this lady's like, oh, you're so kind. I'll grant you 3 wishes. And so Sam makes a first wish, but it's almost like the wishes are too literal, you know? Like, they give her kind of what she asks for, but almost like too much of what she asks for. But despite that, Sam ends up making 2 more wishes after her first one, and they're not quite, they're not quite what she wished for. And so she has to deal with these wishes that keep getting more and more serious. And how is she going to deal with that, So I also read Cuckoo by Gretchen Felker-Martin. This was a 2024 book, and it's got my, these like matte covers. I get my like little oily fingerprints all over the covers. This is a book I also really enjoyed. This is about the first part of this, which was actually a really substantial amount. thankfully, I will say, a really substantial amount of this is this group of kids going to, a group of teenagers going to a conversion survivalist camp. Terrible. One where they kidnap you and throw you in a van, take you states away, you have no contact with anybody, and they just do whatever the fuck they want with you for weeks, months, until they say you're done. So I think we've heard a lot in the media recently about, you know, these like troubled teen, like the troubled teen industry. It's exactly what it is, but like with some extra stank on it, because these are also gay kids, right? Queer kids, trans kids who are being put in this camp. So it's not only like you're a troubled teen, it's like also you're not gay, you're not trans. So like I feel like like an extra level above just troubled teen. So terrible. And while these teens are at this camp, some of them start going missing, and then once in a while they'll see their missing friend again, and it's like they're a totally different person. Like it's like all of a sudden they've drank the Flavor-Aid, right? Like they've drank the Flavor-Aid of the camp. They've bought into this message, and it's like, that doesn't seem right. Why would they do that? All of a sudden they're just agreeing with everything that this pastor guy is saying. That's weird. And not just that, but like physically they seem a little bit different. But you know, the campers can't quite put a finger on what it is that, you know, they want to get to the bottom of it. And it's really spearheaded by this girl named Nadine, who is like super like strong-willed and brash, and a really great character. They're all really, most of them are really, I really liked almost all the characters in this book. So when bad things happen to them, I was like, oh, my heart, you know. So that, in taking place in the camp in the 90s, was a majority of the book. And I really liked that part. Now I will say, the second part of this, which takes place about 250 pages in, and is the last part of this book, it says 16 years later. So now these kids are entering their 30s, in their 30s, and they find out that the camp is still running. They, you know, want to put an end to it for real, for real. So they have to get back together and do that. And I feel like the second part of it wasn't quite as strong as the first part. Of course, these are very traumatized adults now at this point, and I feel like, I don't know, I just felt so much more connected to them as teenagers. And I felt like as adults, a lot of them didn't feel as connected to. So yeah, I don't know. And I feel like a lot of the action scenes just felt a little like sludgy to me. Like I had to reread it a couple times. I had to reread them a couple times to be like, what exactly is going on here? And was it me? Could have been, because this month was a very busy month. Not only was it Thanksgiving, which is a holiday that I host for my family, which I love to do, but it's very busy. Not only that, but I was in the middle of writing, researching and writing a paper, which was a lot of, you know, a lot of brain power. So it's like, what is it, the novel? Is it me? I don't know, but I felt like and it wasn't like anything else except for these like really action-packed scenes where I was like, what the fuck is going on here? So that part of it is something, you know, I would say that was kind of a bummer, because it was like these, you know, these scenes in a book are the scenes that are supposed to be like the best fucking scenes, you know? The scenes where like this shit is fucking happening. But in this novel, to me, it felt like I couldn't really get like a good awareness of what was happening. I don't know exactly how to describe it, except for that it felt muddy and sludgy. And I had to reread it because I was like, what is happening here? I don't know. So, I don't know. And that's not to say that I didn't enjoy the book, because it was really just those bits where it felt like that. But all in all, I think a really great book still. Okay, now on to a book I didn't like as much, Sacrificial Animals by Kailee Pedersen. At least the audiobook told me that her last name is Pedersen, which, you know what, this happens sometimes where, growing up in the Midwest at least, there are names that I hear pronounced one way, and then, like, there's this street in town that is spelled Knudsen maybe, or S-O-N, and I went to school with some people with that last name, and we pronounce the K, Knudsen, and people here call it Knudsen, and I'm always like, that's not it. Wouldn't I know? Isn't that like a Scandinavian? But anyway, so I know Pedersens, but anyway, this is Pedersen, according to the audio copy, which I listened to when I was doing Thanksgiving. I listened to some of this when I was doing Thanksgiving preparations this month. So this is this is a story where it's like nobody in this is like really likable at all. And there are times where I really like novels like that. Like, I like an unlikable character. For example, Last Days of Jack Sparks. Very unlikable character. This guy is a dick the entire time. But this one, it's just like, everyone's just, it's not even like they're dicks. It's like, I don't know. I don't even know how to properly describe to you, how to put into words how my head feels about this. But we're following a father, his two grown sons. They're in their 40s, which is one thing that I like about this novel. And one thing that I've noticed in quite a few horror novels recently this year is that we're getting characters that are not in their early 20s, which I appreciate, because there are, you know, it's a different stage of your life when you're in your 30s and when you're in your 40s. You're dealing with different shit, and that's interesting, okay? We don't all have to be 20. We're not 20 anymore. Like, so many people are not 20. I'm not 20 anymore. The father is terminally ill. He tells his sons, who are both no longer living at home like their father wanted them to. You know, their father really had this plan for them where they would all live in their familial home, or at least the oldest son would inherit it, right? And take over and, you know, be the heir to Stag's Crossing, which is this house that the father built, this beautiful house in the woods. Instead, the oldest son married a Chinese woman, which the father like cast him out of the family, like disowned him for doing. And so now he only has the youngest son named Nick. And Nick also has left the home for quite a bit of time and has done his own thing, but has never married. And Nick is bisexual, which is interesting to read about in a book. I feel like often we have characters who are gay or who are lesbian, and I don't know. I feel like, at least in what I read, there aren't a ton of bi characters, and I can't think of a book that I've read recently where the male character is bisexual either, except for one that I'm reading right now, actually. But Nick comes back because his father is sick. He's the youngest son, the one that is not disowned and disinherited. So at this point, he's, you know, going to inherit the family home, and the father's like, oh, I'm dying. Please convince your older brother Josh to come home, even though I've been a bad father and disinherited him because he's married a Chinese woman. And so they convince Joshua and his wife Amelia to come back. Just please, since I'm dying. And so Josh and Amelia come back, and Nick is very attracted to his brother's wife, Amelia. And Amelia seems like a very nice woman. Very cultured, sophisticated, and she's very pleasant despite the terrible things her father-in-law has said to her and about her. You know, she is doing what she can to support her husband during this time, and it comes to a point though where, I don't know, what do I tell you about this? It's like, so little happens until the climax. It tells you Nick and Amelia start to have an affair. Okay, and then it does also tell you that Nick thinks that Amelia might have ulterior motives. And what could Amelia's motives be? And like, it's been 20 years since her and Josh got married. So what the fuck, like, what could it be? Let me find out. But I feel like this just took so long to get anywhere. And it's like, since nobody's really likable, and since Amelia was really the only character I found interesting at all, and she's like not the main character, so it's like I'm dealing with boring old Nick. It's just like, I don't know, he's just such a pity party. I feel like he was just so boring, and I couldn't even really read about the character that I found the most interesting. So it was an okay book. At the end, I was like, I finished it, wanted to know the motives behind the things that happened, but it wasn't my favorite book of all time. Then I also read The Last Days of Jack Sparks by Jason Arnopp, and I like this much more than his other book, Ghoster. This is about an author, maybe you would call him a documentarian or a journalist, named Jack Sparks, who is an unlikable character done well, I feel like. So this guy's just a dick. He's a contrarian, and he's working on writing a book about spirits and the afterlife and like the occult and sort of like religion too, because it all ties together when you're talking about stuff like that. And this starts out, and he is observing an exorcism, but because he's a dick, he's watching this girl, I think in Italy, be exorcised, and he like starts laughing during the exorcism rite, the rite of exorcism. And then after that, bad things start happening to him, and he thinks that it might be because he is a dick and he laughed during this exorcism. You know, you're with him when he's going around writing this book. He's talking to people who do stuff with the occult. He's talking to, a family who thinks that they've been haunted, a paranormal society, people like that. All well, you are, getting stories about his childhood, about his family, and he's really a very unreliable narrator. And I have to say, like, for a while I was like, okay, where is this book even going? But then, and especially towards the end, I was like, whoa, this is weird. It does get pretty spooky, and like the ending especially, it gets like really kind of existential and very eerie. Like the things that happen to Jack are really fucking just eerie, and yeah, I can't, like, I don't want to go into any spoilers, but it's like, when I was talking about, maybe you do, there's this book called Coup de Grace by Sophia Adram, and this person is trapped in, I think, like subway tunnels, right? And I was talking about like how fucking scary that would be. And that doesn't happen to Jack, but there is something that happens to him, and it's like the fear that I feel about thinking about getting stuck in subway tunnels. It's like the fear that I was feeling about what happens to Jack, like that would never happen to me, but it is really spooky thinking about it. So I don't know. This was pretty spooky at the end. I don't like it. I don't like thinking about it. It's implausible, but just what if? I don't like it. And I think that that's also a book where it really probably needs a reread too, because things are you're gonna reread it and you're gonna be like, oh yes, this all ties together, doesn't it? So when I finished it, I have this sense of deja vu almost, where I've watched or read something where something similar happens to someone, and I'm still thinking about it, and I can't place what it could be. So I don't know. Anyway, those are I liked that book a lot. Those are the books that I read in the second half of November. I'd love to know, of course, if you've read any of these, what you thought about them, and if Jack Sparks made you feel existential dread like it did for me. I'd love to know what you got up to in November, if there was any really great books that that you read and you loved. But that is all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you later. Goodbye.